My name's Matt Karmil, and Native asked me to come down to the studio today and talk a little about distortion and how that works in my production process. When I first started to notice the recording process, I was around 16, 17. It would be a combination of listening to stuff like Cypress Hill, DJ Muggs and producers like that. They were sampling this 60s music, but they would have this extra sheen, like using SP1200s, MPC60, and this kind of thing. Of course, in those days, it wasn't intentional, but now this is printed in my mind as when I hear the SP1200, immediately I'm hearing this sort of hip-hop records that I loved when I was, growing up. I first started music by playing the guitar, so it was absolutely like having amps turned up to full and distortion pedals. My use of distortion now is much more subtle. I wouldn't perceive it to be distortion per se, it's more texture. Of course, you use equipment which distorts, and different machines give different artifacts or different plugins, but it's a less explicit version of distortion that I'm usually interested in now. I would say that the main source of my distortion is tape machines. I've got this one here today, which is one of my main sound design instruments. I would say the colour of tape, because it's such a dynamic instrument that it's very level dependent, that you can change the blend of noise and distortion and the characteristics with one control, being volume. I made a sound called 3-bar synths for the sample pack. I captured some audio from my Modular. It was a very simple sound, and then the delay is doing quite a lot of the work. And then I've used several of the distortion plugins to add a little more texture to it. I made it 3 bars long, thinking that it would phrase interestingly across a 4-bar drum pattern. I thought it would be nice to work with a sort of Hoover sound, so I captured this raw sound from, I think it was a hardware synthesizer. Recorded it into Ableton, did some processing with the Dirt plugin, very subtle, but I just added a little extra to it, and then dropped it into Simpler to pitch it down and then create a MIDI clip. So it's the same sound, and then I've added one more byte plugin at the end, just a little bit of filter shift and a tiny bit of saturation. I think that's how the Hoover sound came together. So one of the percussive sounds that I made for the sample pack is called Kick and Hat, I believe. Here I have just the hat loop by itself. It sounds like this. It's a collection of 3 sounds. 2 are audible and 1 is the sidechain. Some modulation there. It's moving around in the stereo field a little bit. Instead of programming velocity, I often use sidechains to change the volumes, knocking sounds in and out. So a lot of the swing and the way that this loop varies is based on sidechaining. When working to distort sounds, it's easy to overdo it. Also, listening to sounds in isolation, if you're trying to mix, is a big mistake. That you can sometimes be shocked at the end of a project. Your solo groups, and you'll have the drums, the bass, the strings, whatever. You solo this, and then you listen to what you've actually made those sounds sound like in isolation, and sometimes it's shocking how what you've actually done, but then when you put them in the mix, it's perfect. It's easy to overdo it, but by the same measure, you should really follow your instinct with that if it works in context, that's what counts, that you don't need to obsess about how distorted something is or how undistorted it is. It really is cooperation between all the instruments.